Hello everyone, welcome to GSS Academy. My name is Vikas Kumar and I will going to start a new topic, sedimentology. So in today's lecture video, we will going to detail about the sedimentology. So before going to deep in the structure, let us discuss some basic property of sedimentology. So when we referring the term sedimentology, if you break the term, then we can write it as sediment plus logy. Sediment plus logy. That means it says that we will going to study the science of sediment. Logy means to study. Like if you write geology, then if you break the term, geo means earth and logy means a study. That means to study the earth is called geology. Similarly, like that, a study of sediment is called sedimentology. So in sedimentology, obviously we will going to study the about the sediment behavior. So how it behaves when they transported it from their original place and get deposited in somewhere basin. Then what is the behavioral changes in the sediment? Does it affected the sedimentary rock or not? So we will all going to study in this lecture video or another lecture video. So before going to deep in the structure, first of all, the two terms we generally use frequently synonymously, the sedimentology and sedimentary petrology. So now you understand that sedimentology is the study of sediment is called sedimentology. But when we referring the term sedimentary petrology, then we are more inclined to know about the behavior of sedimentary rock, like their texture, their structure, their mineralogy and their geochemistry. So the basic difference in the term we use is the sedimentary petrology and sedimentology is, in sedimentology we are more interested their property of sediment, that how it reacts when it mixes with the water and different transporting agent. But in sedimentary petrology we are more inclined towards their textural pattern, their mineralogical composition, their geochemistry and other aspects that happen after the formation of sedimentary rock. So obviously in this lecture video we will going to study about the sedimentology. So we will discuss about the sediment. Okay, so before I started the sedimentology, we have to first define the sediment. What is sediment? So sediment is nothing but it is the naturally occurring material. What is naturally occurring material? That is broken down by process of weathering and erosion. Here two new terms introduced, weathering and erosion. So sediment is a naturally occurring material that is broken down by process of weathering and erosion, and it is subsequently transported by the action of wind, water or ice. You all know that water is the largest transporting agent. So obviously our focus is more towards the water, because water is largest transporting agent. Obviously ice and aeolian are also a transporting agent, and gravity is also a transporting agent, but we will more focused in sedimentology about the water. Okay, so we introduced here three new terms: weathering, erosion and transportation. Okay, so weathering is, all of you know that the weathering is decomposition and disintegration of pre-existing bedrock. Erosion took place after the weathering. That weathered material when eroded from in situ places, then it is called the erosion. And transportation is the medium of transporting by various method, either the wind, water or ice and other transporting agent, and then they get deposited in somewhere in the basin. So now the question is, when we call the sediment, here where in situ place where weathering is happen or somewhere else? So the answer is sediment is defined when that weathered material transported and get deposited into somewhere in the basin, then we call it is called sediment. You can clearly understand by this cartoon. Look at here. First of all, by the action of any tectonic activity, there is an upliftment will took place. After the upliftment, obviously if there is something upliftment, the simply it is the addition of mass to the equilibrium. Suppose this is the line of equilibrium, then if you will add something extra mass, upliftment is something that added the something extra mass on the equilibrium. So if you will add the some extra masses, then obviously to maintain the equilibrium, erosion will take place. Nature always balances themselves. So if the addition is took place, then subtraction will also took place. And where from a subtraction will took place? Either from here, and that upliftment will obviously they will get the erosion to balance the equilibrium. So first of all, if the upliftment exposure of bedrock is here, then the weathering is happen here by some action we will see later in this video. After the weathering, the erosion will take place, and after the erosion, that various transporting agent will transport the material in somewhere in the basin. So if once the material is get deposited in somewhere basin, then we call this sediment. And after a longer time, by the action of load and temperature and pressure changes, that sediment get lithified, and after the lithification they converted into a rock that we call the sedimentary rock. So now you understand from weathering to sedimentary rock that how the sedimentary rock formed. So the whole processes from upliftment and weathering to formation of sedimentary rock is called, and formation of sediment is called sedimentation. The whole process from here to here is called sedimentation. So now the question is, if this is the sediment, then how we differentiate it from soil? Is the soil and sediment is same thing or different thing? Sometimes in interview or somewhere in examination, they frequently ask that is the soil and sediment is same or they are different from each other. So the answer is obviously they are different from each other. How? Because soil is generally in situ process. What it means? In situ process means if upliftment of rock is here and weathering take place here, then soil will form here. Right now, so first of all, the first difference between soil and sediment is sediment. You just now you define the sediment is sediment when weathered particle will transport it and get deposited somewhere in the basin. Then we give the term as the sediment. But soil is as we say that soil is in situ process that is happen on the original place of the rock. But the second difference between soil and sediment is soil take much longer time to form. So the soil is take much longer time and it includes many biological activity in the formation of soil. So soil is obviously first of all it is a in situ process and it takes much longer time to develop the soil. Either it is immature, mature, that will be the different thing, but for the formation of soil it will take much longer time in comparison to the sediments. So that the soils and sediment is two different things. We cannot say the same soils and sediment. Okay. So now we understand what is soil, what is sediment, what is sedimentation, and what is sedimentology. Now as we include two different terms, weathering and erosion. So now let us discuss in this lecture video. We will going to study little bit about weathering and erosion. In detail you may study in the geomorphology, weathering and weathering products. But in this video, because weathering is the first step, as you see here, the weathering is the first step in the formation of sediment, so that we will study about the preliminary idea about the weathering, especially the chemical weathering. Okay, so let's see. So first of all, if we define the weathering is decomposition and disintegration of existing rock. So again we include here two different terms, decomposition and disintegration. It may took place decomposition and disintegration by various methods. Either decomposition will take place chemically by the minerals changes by the chemical reaction. Disintegration may took place by the action of any physical activity, physical forces, either by the stress, either by the any different thing. But decomposition and disintegration, on that basis, which will lead important role or proper role, on that basis we classify the weathering into three parts. First one is, we define the weathering into three parts. The first one is mechanical weathering. The second one is chemical weathering. And third one is biological weathering. Okay, so obviously the chemical weathering is one of the most important for the sedimentology or any other sedimentary processes. The chemical weathering is one of the most important thing. So we will going to start the, first of all we will see the all the dimension and parameters of physical chemical weathering. So weathering and erosion will we combine these two terms, then we give the term denudation. These are the combined effect of weathering and erosion. So let us start first of all the chemical weathering. Okay, so weathering, as we see that the weathering divided into three parts, physical, chemical and biological. These are few processes that took place in the chemical weathering and physical weathering. Chemical weathering, the first one is simple or we called congruent solution. Second one is hydrolysis or we called incongruent dissolution. Third one is oxidation and reduction, hydration, dehydration, ion exchange and chelation. So we will see one by one all the chemical weathering, and we will understand what is happening in the simple or congruent dissolution, in hydrolysis, in oxidation and other processes. In physical weathering, few of the physical weathering are freeze and thaw method, salt weathering, insolation, stress release, exfoliation, spheroidal. We will not interested here the product of weathering, because that will be the part of the geomorphology. We will only discuss the chemical weathering processes. We are interested in the processes that how they form the sediment, because we will going to study about behavior of sediment. So we are more interested in the process of the chemical weathering. So let us start first of all simple or congruent weathering. So weathering, the term, as we mentioned the chemical weathering, that here the reaction will take place. That means here the chemical reaction will take place. So all of you know that the chemical reaction or any kind of activity reaction, when chemical reaction will take, suppose that this is A plus B form C plus D. A plus B will form C plus D. So if A is inactive, or not wish to react with B, then the reaction will not proceed further. What I am trying to explain this is, any chemical mineral, any minerals that is chemically inactive, then they will not wish to go to the any further reaction. This concept we can understand with this cartoon. Suppose let us have a 3-4 object A, B, C and D on a different height scale, So all of you may heard the formula del G equal to del H minus T delta S. Del G equal to del H minus T delta S. This is popularly known as Gibbs free energy. So let us see how it plays and how it plays the important role to tell about the reaction series or stability of the minerals. So suppose that stability of any minerals is seen in terms of their Gibbs energy. If this Gibbs energy, suppose that here we will not go into in detail the enthalpy and entropy, but you can see that if entropy will increase, that means the randomness will increase at a constant temperature and at a constant heat enthalpy, then you can understand that del G will goes to negative, more and more negative. What it indicates? If del G will negative, then it clearly indicates that the mineral is ready to react with other minerals. That means it is unstable and forming the more stable mineral after the reaction. If del G is more and more negative, then they have more tendency to react with the other minerals. Suppose if one minerals A has -10 and B has -15, then these B minerals has more tendency to react with some other mineral, and after if negative value of del G increases, the more stable product will form. So look at here, the stability of minerals, the Gibbs energy will seen in terms of their potential energy. If we look at the A and D object, then we can see that these A and B are unstable. Why we called it unstable? Because let us see here, it has, if you write the potential energy PE equal to mgh. So for a constant mass, fixed mass, the gravity is constant but height is the main variable. So if the A has maximum height in comparison to B and C and D, so it has more potential energy. If you will give some extra energy or due to the slope, it will be not stable at that point and it will rapidly go there and deposited either at the place of B or at the place of C. So it is highly unstable. Similarly, the D is also highly unstable because it has maximum potential energy. Now look at here the situation of B and C. So this is the, suppose this is the datum line. So B is something in a position is in trough, it is more or less stable, but in comparison to C it is metastable. Why we called metastable? Because if you give some energy here, either it is this way or this way. If it is in this way, then at this place B will be also in a state of unstable. So metastable is term given when the situation from this place, if they either go this way or this way, then the stability of B is quickly changes, because A is always unstable but B is for a time it is metastable or stable, but if B is gain some energy, then it is again in a state of unstable. So that's why we called it is in the state of metastable. So after, if you look at the C, then this is more or less the correspond to the datum plane and it is totally in a stable state. So now you conclude one point is, if potential energy, if look at here, if potential energy is if potential energy is maximum, then stability is minimum, and if potential energy is minimum, stability is maximum. So the potential energy is inversely proportional to the stability of that object. That is why we are explaining these, because these mineral, earlier I said that these mineral phases and these have more tendency to react with the other minerals, right now, in comparison to the C and B. A and D has more tendency to react with the other minerals in comparison to the B and C. That's why we call the, if potential energy increases, what it means, the height is increases, right? And potential energy means H is increases. So if the potential energy increases, the stability of that phases will decreases. So this is the important relation. Here we conclude that if the potential energy and stability of that phases is inversely proportional to each other. Now look at this diagram. So let us now start. If stability is there, then only minerals wants to react with any other mineral. Why? Because of to gain the stability further. If earlier we said that if del G is going to be negative and negative, then the mineral has more tendency to react with minerals and forming a very stable phase. If there is a maximum negative value as much as possible, then there is a maximum stability after the reaction will take place. So now look at the one by one the processes of chemical weathering. So first process is simple solution. Okay, so as the name suggests, simple solution, that means if any minerals in meteoric water, any minerals in meteoric water get dissolved completely. What it means, completely dissolution means there is no any other product will form. Suppose NaCl plus H2O, after the reaction they form Na plus Cl minus. That means these NaCl completely dissociated into cations and anions when they reacted with the normal water, that is called meteoric water. But in many cases, these are, all of you know that, halite. These are halite. Halites are generally more susceptible for the weathering product. These are generally more susceptible because they can dissolve in any meteoric normal water. But when we talk about the other silicate minerals like quartz and other mineral more resistant, that are not very easy to dissolve in the meteoric water. So in that case, you may heard in oceanography that normal meteoric water generally H2O react with CO2, reacts with CO2, and this normal water, after the reaction of CO2, it changes into mildly acidic H2CO3, that is called carbonic acid. So after that, right now these are neutral water. After the reaction of CO2, these are converted into acidic water. So the acidic water has more capability or ability to dissolve any mineral in comparison with the normal water. Further, this H2CO3 liberated hydrogen ion when they reacted with water, and further it also liberated one more hydrogen ion and they converted into bicarbonate. This one is bicarbonate, and this one is carbonate. We can better understand by this cartoon. This one is, so at the interface of this one, the atmosphere and hydrosphere, the CO2 generally comes from either the plant that residue or direct from atmosphere. After the reaction of these CO2 and H2O, these are forming the, in ocean also, H2CO3, that is called carbonic acid. Carbonic acid, and after further reaction they are break into bicarbonate, and after the further the removal of one hydrogen, they are converted into carbonate ion. So now you can understand that, you all may know that the liberating the H plus will rapidly increases the acidity of the ocean, or you can say of the water. So if the acidity increases, then obviously now you understand that previously I said that the acidic water has more capability or more ability to dissolve the mineral in comparison with the normal or rainwater. So now it has more capability to dissolve, and the carbonate mineral are more susceptible to bathed or dissolve in the acidic water. So now the question is, if there is a capability of this water to dissolve the carbonate, then obviously all the carbonate minerals in the ocean should be dissolved completely. Then how we get that carbonate minerals and rocks, limestone in the ocean floor and other things? So how we get? So answer is that if this process is continuously going on, then one term that is you may heard is buffering of the ocean chemistry. What happens here, if the acidic character of the water increases rapidly, then it reverses the reaction. That means after further, suppose there is a formation of bicarbonate ion, then obviously these are also react with the H plus, and further it converted into H2CO3. That's why we write the equation like this: H2O plus CO2, and we give this sign. That means reactions are reversible for forward and backward also. H2O plus CO2, H2CO3, and then liberated one H plus ion, and it converted into HCO3 minus, and after again CO3 2 minus, and this reaction also repeat itself to maintain the acidity of the ocean. That is why we all the carbonate rocks are not dissolved in that matter. So that's why we get the carbonate. So that's formed the CO3 2 minus, the carbonate ion. Further it reacts with the Ca2 plus calcium ions, and they form the simultaneously CaCO3 ions. CaCO3, the calcium carbonate, that is called limestone and other carbonate minerals. So this is the whole processes that regulates the formation of calcium carbonate, and how the dissolving power of normal water enhances many times when they reacts with the CO2 and forming these acid. So right now you may you understand the behavior of dissolving capability of normal water and acidic water. So now the question is the dissolving capability of acidic water is same for all the mineral, or same for all the compositions, or it is different for different environment? So only the pH will regulate the dissolving power of the minerals, or any other factor also play the important role? So now look at this diagram. First of all, I will erase this. Okay. So this diagram is called equilibrium solubility. First of all, write this name: equilibrium solubility. Equilibrium solubility. So in this on the abscissa x-axis there is a pH scale. There is a pH scale. Okay, so on the abscissa there is a pH scale, while on the ordinate there is a solubility curve. Solubility is generally measured in terms of ppm or milligram per liter. Okay, so look at this diagram. First of all, look at here, Fe2O3 and FeO. Fe2O3 and FeO, these both are the oxides of iron. These both are oxides of iron. The difference is, if you write oxidation state here, FeO X equal to +2, that means it is in +2 state. If you write here, this one is either in +2 or +3. Okay, Fe2O3 you can write like this, Fe2O3 FeO to Fe so if you write 2x minus 6 equal to 0, so x equal to +3. So it is in the state of +3, right? So the name for Fe+2 is ferrous oxide, and this one is ferric oxide. So the ferric oxide, you can see, if you plot here, the pH condition to dissolve the ferric oxide is almost below the 3.5 or 4, but for the ferrous oxide the dissolution is around normal condition. So you can relate that to dissolve the ferric oxide, the environment should be very acidic, like the pH is, if pH is below the 4.4, and this will be the intense condition, and this is very acidic condition, and a ferrous oxide dissolve in very normal condition. So the ability of this same iron oxide, for the changes in oxidation number, one is ferrous and other is ferric, their dissolving capability is changes rapidly. Like one is dissolved in very normal condition, while other is dissolved in very acidic condition. Similarly, you can see that the Al2O3, SiO2, CaO3, and these CaO3 and SiO2 are inversely related. SiO2 and CO3 are inversely related in the range of 4 to generally 6.5 or 9 in range. There, if SiO2 is generally insoluble in that condition, while CaCO3 are more and more soluble. So previously we also said that the carbonate minerals are generally more susceptible either in a normal condition for the dissolution, but silicate mineral are generally more resistant for the dissolution. So you can also say the differences in SiO2 amorphous silica and crystalline silica. So in amorphous, you can say that in that similar condition, SiO2 has more solubility, almost 10 times or 100 times more solubility in comparison to the crystalline silica. So these are the different structure, and different condition, the solubility and solubilizing behavior of that phases are different from each other. So they also obviously depends on the different pH scales, that how they react. pH scale, if you don't know, then generally pH we measure, like pH is written as minus log 10 H plus, minus log 10 H plus, and H plus, and a scale is like that from 0 to 14, while in 7 is we called neutral, while below 7 we called acidic, while above 7 we called basic. So these are the basics of pH value. So below 7 the value is acidic, above between 7 to 14 we call the basic, and 7 is the neutral. So now you understand the simple and congruent. Why we called it congruent? Because there is no net precipitation of other minerals after the dissolution of that minerals in normal water. So now you can see that in different environment, how the dissolution of the mineral react with the different from each other. Okay.